Hey friend, this is the Traveling Wellnesspreneur podcast, and I'm your host, Allie Temple. I travel full-time running my dream wellness biz from the tropics, and I want to share with you how you can create a lifestyle of freedom and purpose too. Stay tuned for inspiring and fun conversations that will empower you to take action towards your dream lifestyle of travel and freedom. Let's get into it. And we're back with the Traveling Wellnesspreneur podcast. Welcome. Today I'm going to be sharing a conversation that I recently had with my friend Joëlle Fixson. She is a YouTube pro, and you will not want to miss this conversation if you are considering starting a YouTube channel to promote your offerings like yoga, meditation, any type of wellness offerings, or if you already have a YouTube channel and you're just feeling like you're not getting any traction. So in this convo, Joëlle shares her experience with making passive income from YouTube. And we also chat about her recent travels. You know how I like to hear about the traveling side, and really interesting to hear about what it's like for Joëlle. She's been living in Dubai for a while now and shares a little bit about her experience there. So before we jump into the conversation with Joëlle, I wanted to remind you that we do have a Facebook group that is the companion to this podcast, the Traveling Wellnesspreneurs Facebook group. I hope you'll join us in there. It's a great community of travel lovers and entrepreneurs, and it's been fun connecting with those of you who have been in there. I know a lot of you joined around the time of the last virtual summit, and we've got some exciting things planned for the future in that group as well. And I also wanted to mention that I do have a free video that's available, Wanderlust Wealth. If you haven't signed up and already received this video, I'm sharing tips with you around how to make a more consistent income remotely so that you do have the freedom to travel the world and to work from anywhere. So we talk about passive income and much more in this free video training. I'll share the link in the show notes as well if you want to scoop up that free video. Now let's get to Joëlle. Joëlle Fixson is a yoga teacher who specializes in simple yet transformative solutions for pain management, helping her global student base move and feel better. Having lived in 7 countries and currently based in Dubai, Joëlle has an eclectic background that includes an MBA and over a decade spent in the corporate world. After being laid off from her last job during the pandemic, she ended up being steered towards teaching yoga online. She describes herself as a YouTube nerd and also offers online programs and a membership. After you listen, be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Joëlle and to learn more about her offerings. And here's the combo. Joëlle Fixson is here. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joëlle. I would love to just start by hearing where you are currently and how long you've been there for.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Allie. It's a pleasure, and hello to everyone who's listening in. So I am actually in Dubai. My husband and I moved here from Berlin about a year and a half ago, and I'm a desert girl now. Let me think. This is the 7th country I've moved in, so I'm not quite a digital nomad like I know a lot of your audience is, but I have moved around quite a bit. And like I said, I was in Berlin before this for just about 4 years. So I do enjoy picking up every couple of years and trying out a new place.
Yeah, that's a lot of countries. Can you share a little bit more some of the other countries that you've lived in over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is I'm Swiss American. My mother is American. My father is Swiss. I was born in Switzerland, mostly grew up there, but also spent part of my teenage years living in the US. And then I moved back to Switzerland for a while and ended up going to university in a different part of the US on the East Coast. Once I became an adult, I sort of hit my stride. I did my master's degree in Singapore and in France. I lived in the UK for a few years, and then I met my husband, who's German, so moved moved there to be with him, and now the UAE, where Dubai is.
Yeah, you are quite the jet setter. That's very cool. Why did you end up in Dubai
Mm.
and are you enjoying it there? What's it like for you?
Yeah, I absolutely love it, and it's a question I get a lot: is why Dubai? I think it's a place, especially for people who have never been there. It's a place that kind of seems to hold a lot of mystery, or it's a place that people maybe have a lot of preconceived notions about without maybe having spent much time there or even read much about Dubai. So for us, I had been here. I was in the corporate world for many, many years before I turned to yoga teaching. And so I had been here on business trips. I had sometimes tacked on, 2 extra days as a tourist, but I had never sort of properly experienced Dubai, I want to say, until 2021 when we came here on vacation. It was actually one of the places at the time during the pandemic that you were allowed to go from Germany. And so we came on vacation, and we were at that time kind of starting to think about where we might want to live next. Luckily, I found myself a husband who enjoyed moving around just about as much as I did. And we just really kind of clicked with Dubai. We loved the sunshine. It was a big change from the weather in Germany. We loved how friendly the people were. We loved how easy it was to get around. We loved that it was obviously a very different part of the world, but at the same time, a pretty accessible place, especially coming as Westerners. So we actually went back a second time about 6 months later, just to cast kind of a more critical eye on it and see if that was really somewhere we could see ourselves living. And we liked it just as much the second time. So from that point on, it became more about, well, okay, how can we get ourselves a visa? How can we, see if we can actually make it happen? And so it did take us some time, because we didn't actually move here until I think about 18 months after our first trip. We made it happen, and we're grateful every day that we did.
That's awesome. I'm going to call you the YouTube queen because as a yoga teacher in the YouTube world, it is
Mhm.
so challenging to kind of make it past the hump and
Mm,
grow a successful channel. And
mm.
I'm just so excited to chat about that with you. And before we get too much into the nuts and bolts, I'm curious, when did you start your YouTube channel? It was before you moved to Dubai, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So I've been, let me think. So it's been just about 4 years now since I started YouTube properly. So I was living in Berlin at the time and working a pretty normal corporate job. And when the pandemic hit, I happened to be working for a company in the travel industry, which obviously was hit very hard during the pandemic. So layoffs were happening everywhere. And my company laid off, I think, about 30% of its workforce a few months into the pandemic. So all of a sudden, I had
Wow.
no job. I had a little bit of money because I got a package when I was laid off. So I knew that I had, I was okay for a few months financially, but I had all of this time that just kind of landed in my lap. And YouTube was something that I had always been interested in purely from a viewer standpoint. I just enjoyed watching other people's YouTube videos. And when I had started practicing yoga years before, I had started on YouTube, and there weren't very many teachers at the time, but that was how I had kind of gotten into it, was doing other people's classes at home with my yoga mat. I very rarely made it to any studios, and then of course during the pandemic you couldn't anyway. So I had certified as a yoga teacher previously, just kind of for my own interest, but I had never done all that much teaching. I had never taught in a studio. And at the time, I was dealing with a few different physical aches and pains. And among other things, I had hip bursitis, which is just kind of an inflammation in your hip. And because I was doing all these yoga practices, I was looking around and thinking, well, has anybody put out like a yoga for hip bursitis class or a yoga for hip pain class? And I couldn't find one. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make my own, because I've kind of figured out the exercises that work well for me. And so that was the very first video I ever made. I didn't even really have any intention that anyone else might watch it. Didn't know what I was doing. All I had was an old cell phone. I didn't even have a microphone yet. I put that up. I actually put it up in 2 languages. So I grew up speaking both English and French. So I made an English version and a French version, because I thought, well, you never know, French people might have hip pain too.
Of course.
And that was just kind of vaguely how it started. When I did lose my job, I had more time to try to figure out YouTube a little bit to make more videos. And it was really a few months in that my husband said to me, you know, I've never seen you this happy in any of your previous jobs. Why don't you see if you can really do something with this YouTube thing and see if one day that might even be a business? And I will say it's been a journey. I've kind of gone through iterations where first YouTube was a hobby, then it was something where I was sort of only doing YouTube in a really concentrated way for, gosh, probably a year and a half or something. Sort of progressively, I came to the idea that maybe it could be more than just a YouTube channel. Maybe it could actually be a business, and then started developing, you know, some paid programs and other offerings to kind of feed off the back of YouTube, I'll say.
Yeah, so you have two YouTube channels. And can you tell us a little bit about them? And please share with us how many subscribers you have because it's incredible.
Sure. So they're pretty similar. The main and very obvious difference is that one is in English and one is in French. But the content, for the most part, I'll say 90% of the content on both channels is basically the same. So it'll be the same video in English and in French. In English now, I have just about 120,000 subscribers, and in French, I've got 90,000. So that said, beyond the content that I put out, there are differences. So at first glance, when you see the subscriber number, you might think, oh, the English one is dramatically more successful. But in fact, in French, I've got kind of I'll say a more loyal following, largely because there's a lot less competition. So if there's anyone out there who thinks that, oh, I can only teach online in English, or I can only build a business teaching in English, I have not found that to be the case at all. I think oftentimes audiences who are a little bit underserved online are really happy if you can speak to them and teach them in their native language. So that might be, you know, food for thought for a few other people out there.
Yeah, I think that really shows that how much strategy needs to be in place for these platforms in order to be successful. So I'm really glad you brought that up because I'm sure there are listeners out there who are wondering, you know, those types of questions. Now, I know that you still love to travel, and recently I saw you were in Bali and Thailand, which are two of my personal favorites.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how YouTube gives you the location freedom to work from wherever you want to work from.
Yeah, so travel, I think it has really always been a part of my life. I hope and expect that will continue to be the case probably forever. And YouTube has really kind of enhanced that possibility. So even when I was in the corporate world, I did travel as much as I could, but of course I was limited by, you know, the X days of vacation that I had each year. Now that's become just a lot more possibilities have opened up with turning towards the online world, kind of YouTube specifically in my case, because you can post videos from anywhere. You can film videos anywhere. Yes, here at home, I've got kind of, you know, the usual wall that I film against when I'm traveling, but I've really kind of gotten a kick out of filming videos in as many countries as I could, or finding a nice new background, like, oh, this spot in front of a river in Colorado or something would make a great spot, or this, you know, beach in some other country would be a lovely background. You know, ultimately, people are not going to watch a video on YouTube just because there's a river in the background or just because it was filmed in whatever location. But for me, it allows me to kind of take my work on the road, to build some memories as well when I look back on certain videos and think, oh yeah, I filmed that, you know, when I was in France or something. There's really not much equipment that I need. I did eventually move past that old cell phone. I do have an actual camera. I did buy a microphone, but when I'm traveling, I don't take very much with me, actually, especially if I'm really going somewhere on a shorter trip and I'm trying to travel light. I've usually just got my iPhone. I've got a slender tripod that I can put it in. I might take my clip-on microphone, or I might just film a practice and then record a voiceover for it at some later time, like when I'm back from the trip. There's really not very much that you need, ultimately. You don't have to be on a certain schedule. It's not like teaching live Zoom classes where you have to be, Sunday morning at 9 a.m. in your regular time zone or something like that, you can kind of control your schedule pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. And you bring the essentials with you, but it's interesting to hear from someone who's been doing this for quite some time and been successful at it that you don't need all of the bells and whistles in order
Yeah.
to put something out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's probably one of the number one questions that I've gotten from other teachers is, oh, what camera do you use and how much money do I need to spend to start a YouTube channel? And again, it's really, really very minimal what you actually need. Yes, at some point it's nice to start investing in yourself and maybe make things a little bit easier on yourself once you're maybe more comfortable with some of the basics. But ultimately, that's not what should stop you, because if you have a cell phone, I guarantee you can start a YouTube channel. You've already got enough equipment.
Well, that actually leads me to my next question. I was going to see if you could share just some tips for any yoga teachers out there who are wanting to get started on YouTube. What would you, if you could go back 4 years ago or so and consider what you wish you knew back then?
So there's kind of two mindsets that are a little bit maybe contradictory, but I think both are helpful. The first mindset is just to get started, because in the beginning, I don't want to say you're going to make mistakes, because I don't think anything is really a mistake when we're starting out, but there will be some flailing around and there will be some moments where you're just not really sure what you're doing. That still happens to me sometimes, and it certainly did much more in the beginning. But if you start, then you've got something. You've created something out of nothing. So I would recommend just starting, putting videos out there. Don't even really worry about whether anybody is finding them or watching them in the beginning, and get to a point where you've got, let's say, about, at least 10, maybe 15 videos, because at that point you've got an actual channel, you've got actual content, you've kind of got a thing. You don't just have one or two videos, which I think a lot of people obsess about getting that first video completely perfect and then either never post it at all, or they post it and then get super disappointed when it doesn't get very many views, which is very, very normal in the beginning. The first mindset is just to get starting, have a beginner's mind, be curious about it. The second thing is, as you're getting started, and once you've got, like I said, those first couple of videos started, only then is when I would say, unless you've got a really, really clear idea in the beginning, which I think most of us don't, only then is when I would really start to ask myself, what kind of a channel in a perfect world would I want to build? So what would my perfect audience member look like? My perfect student, if you are a yoga teacher? And what kind of video would that person be looking for? Like, really think to yourself. So you're targeting women 40 to 60, something like that, who have 3 kids and only a certain amount of free time. What would that woman be typing into YouTube? Or what kind of practice would that woman be interested? Does she have back pain? Does she like morning yoga better than evening yoga? And then you can kind of start to trial some different videos, thinking like, oh, you know what? I want to try 3 morning yoga classes and then 3 evening yoga classes, and maybe see which ones do better. Which ones did I enjoy making more, and which ones got more likes, more comments? So it's all just kind of a little bit of an information gathering in the beginning. And then at a later stage, thinking about whether you want to get some help, whether that is finding some sort of YouTube program. There's some really good ones out there, or working with a coach, or finding ways so that you're continuously improving. But in the beginning, just start.
Yes, I love that. I like that you talked about the kind of client or student avatar and really creating something for them for that niche. And I find that one thing that a lot of yoga teachers have tried and not had success with is just being too vague with what they're putting out, and they're not standing out. There isn't a specific problem that they're trying to solve. Would you say that that's an important piece as well?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because yes, I think on YouTube, that's just as true, maybe even more true than on some of the other platforms. And this, by the way, is something that I can see firsthand, because even though I'm putting out essentially identical content on my 2 channels, the reaction is quite different. So in French, and again, if you happen to teach in a different language, you might be able to get away with a little bit of a broader audience and a little bit of consequently broader videos, right? Because again, you're just not going to have the same amount of competition. You might be able to get away with, if you're teaching in I don't know, Czech or something, or a language where there's even fewer videos out there, you might just be able to make yoga videos for Czech speakers because those people just want to do yoga, right? If you're teaching in English or a more common language, I think finding a niche is really, really important. And it's something that I fought for a long time because I didn't want to exclude people. I think probably all of us go through that at some point. But what I realized was that people, like I mentioned, that hip pain video I did as my very first one, people were coming to me because they wanted bite-sized videos to help them deal with painful conditions. So I started putting out things like 10-minute yoga for neck pain, 10-minute yoga for lower back pain, for foot pain, for chronic pain. And those were almost always the ones that got me more views and more reactions and followers also than if I just put out a morning yoga to relax type of more generic video. So think about the fact that there are already a lot of yoga teachers out there on YouTube. That does not mean that it's too late, but the more generic your video is, the more you're going to compete with the generic videos of people like Yoga with Adrian, who's got millions and millions of followers. And that's probably not how you're going to build an audience that wants to come back and practice with you. You talked about getting over the hump on YouTube. I think that's such a nice way of putting it. I still kind of go out and research other yoga teachers' channels as well, because I find this super interesting. There are so many channels out there of people who have put out, let's say, 3, 5 videos, and then clearly at some point just kind of gave up or haven't returned to it. And again, that's very understandable. It is easy to get discouraged when we put a lot of effort into those early videos and they don't take off right away, but that's normal. You got to give people a chance to find you and figure out who you are and whether you're a teacher that they enjoy practicing with. So please don't be discouraged. Please consider that there is a hump and at some point you will get over it. See every video as one step closer to that hump.
That's a great point. I think that a lot of yoga teachers do get discouraged, and having the patience and not being hard on yourself, right? Like you said earlier, the perfectionist piece is so common with yoga teachers, and trying to make the most beautiful, perfect video, it's really not going to help you out if you go at it from that angle. But instead, like you said, collecting information as you start to put videos out. And I think that was so important, that the point that you mentioned about just seeing how people are responding and paying attention to the videos that are doing better and considering why, and considering making more videos that are similar to the ones that are performing better. That's really great practical advice, and I don't think that a lot of yoga teachers really take that angle, especially when they're starting out. So thank you for that. So Joelle, I wanted to ask you, I know a lot of my listeners and my community are interested in learning more about passive income, so they can have the freedom to travel and live their lives the way that they want to. Now, I'm curious if you can kind of explain what it means with passive income when it comes to YouTube. And I would say passive in quotations, because it's, as we know, it's never really passive. And I think sometimes the idea of a YouTube channel might sound easier than it actually is. And I can only imagine the amount of work and time that you have dedicated to your channel over the years.
I think a lot of people, whether they're yoga teachers or not, a lot of people who are thinking about YouTube, who doesn't love the idea of passive income? And I'm using the same air quotes that you did a moment ago. For me, if you're taking a long-term approach, this is one of the biggest advantages that YouTube has over some of the other well-known social media platforms, because if we just talk sort of purely on YouTube, I'm not even talking yet about building an audience on YouTube and then moving some of that audience towards your email list and then selling them paid programs or a membership or anything like that. But just YouTube itself is, to my knowledge, one of the only platforms that will directly pay creators. So if you think about, if you go on YouTube right now and watch just about any video on there, you're almost definitely going to be shown an ad before the video, maybe after the video, sometimes even during the videos, depending on what type of video it is and what the creator has set up. So every time you watch an ad, the creator of that video will get a very small amount of money. So I'll caveat that with the fact that in the beginning, you have to reach certain thresholds to be able to directly monetize via YouTube. As of right now, those thresholds are that you have to have at least 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, on your channel, and you have to have 4,000 watch hours in the past 12 months, meaning in the past 365 days, in total, viewers will have had to view videos on your channel for at least 4,000 hours. And that does take a little while to reach. It, was true for me. It was true for just about everybody. But once you do reach that, then all of the videos that you have made up until that point, as well as any future videos that you put out, can be monetized, meaning you don't have to ever touch those videos again, and they will still continue to make you money. You're right that I have put a tremendous amount of effort and time into building my channel, but most of that time and effort was very concentrated into, I'll say, the first 2 years, 2.5 maybe. So the past year and a half or so at this point, I'm not putting out nearly as many videos as I used to, because I've already got over 300 on each of my channels. Wow. And those 300 plus videos are still making money for me. And so that is something that I would consider passive at this point, despite all the work that obviously went into those videos at some point. So for me, if my husband and I take a trip, or there's a week where I've just got more going on and not only do I not put out a YouTube video, but I might not really do much work at all, I know that there's a certain sum of money that I can count on each and every month that's going to come in, even if I put out 0 new videos that month. It's a longer term game. YouTube is not what I would recommend to anybody who kind of wants to make a lot of money really quickly, but it is something that if you're taking a longer term approach can certainly play into your income strategy.
So it sounds like for those who are interested in starting a YouTube channel, they should enter that with patience and consistency and knowing that it is a long-term commitment in order to especially get to the point of passive income.
I think that's a good attitude to go in with. And that doesn't mean that YouTube can't make you any money before you reach that point, or can't do anything for your business, because there are certainly other seeds that you can start to plant even into your very earliest videos. If you're already building an email list and you have a freebie that you've already created or plan on creating, you can mention that at the end of your video. Say something like, if you enjoyed this class, I think you'd really enjoy trying my 15-minute yoga for hip pain video. Just click the first link in the description. You can just put that into the last 20 seconds or so of your video, and a certain percentage of people will click on it and choose to get your freebie, and you've just got yourself a new person on your email list, whether or not that video had any ads in front of it. So YouTube's been wonderful for me in terms of building my email list. I've never played around with anything like Facebook ads or any sort of other advertising. I just use YouTube to basically build myself a smaller audience of people who are a little bit more interested in maybe one day following me off of YouTube to something like a membership or a paid offering. Don't think to yourself that the mountain towards getting monetized on YouTube is some sort of insurmountable peak. There's other things YouTube can do for you even before that.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That's such a great point. And yes, we should always be growing our email list in any way that we can. So
we're all doing our best.
Yes. Well, Joelle, you shared so much wisdom with us today. I'm so grateful. And I would love to finish off and just have you tell us where we can find you and how yoga teachers can work with you if they're interested in starting up with YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm always happy to connect with other teachers, especially online teachers. I think we can all learn from each other. So if anybody is just interested in checking out my YouTube channel, that's just Yoga with Joelle. It's Joelle. yogawithjoelle.com is my website. I do offer YouTube coaching. I do channel audits for anyone who's already got an existing YouTube channel that they'd like me to have a look at. And I also have a kind of some quick tips in a free guide that I've put together. So maybe if you want to share those links with people, I'd be more than happy to connect and maybe even meet a few people in coaching calls or something like that.
That's wonderful. So we will share that information in the show notes. Be sure to check those out. And Joelle, thank you again so much for your time. Enjoy Dubai and let's connect again soon.
Thank you, Ali. Thanks, everyone.
That's it for now. Thanks so much for joining me. And until next time, let's stay connected. Follow me on Instagram at Ali Temple Yoga. Join us in the Traveling Wellnesspreneurs Facebook group. And if you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.